In this video guide, we're going to talk about ZBrush and ArmorPaint. So how we can export from ZBrush and use another software to work on the mesh, on the texture, or on the mapping or the material. So we're going to make an example with ArmorPaint. So we go here in the subtool and we can decide, first of all, if we want to export everything or just a part of our project. So in this case, I'm going to focus here on the body armor and the shoulder, but mainly on the body armor. But these are all options that you can do anytime in the export process. So first thing, we're gonna export the mesh. So to export the mesh, we can use the tool palette, click on export, and just select the type of format that we want to use. So it could be FBX. In general, I think that FBX OBJ are more compatible with all the other software, so I usually go for FBX or OBJ. Now here you can select if you want to export only the selected object or the visible or everything that it's in the project. And also I want to change here the orientation. So the Z will be my up axis, but in some cases the epsilon is the up axis. So you need to change that there. And you have like also toolbag, 3D Studio Max, 3ds Max, Unity, others like presets. Now here we can choose if we want to embed the maps, but we need to have the maps to embed it. So we're gonna see that later. I'm just gonna show you here to export just the mesh first. So click on export and the job is done. So this is like the easiest thing to do. And we can also try with other different format. If we are using different software like Maya or Cinema 4D, you can try with OBJ. Also, like with Blender, you have like different options essentially. And this is the first that we're gonna do, the first export. And now let's jump into ArmorPaint. Now, if you are interested, you can see the ArmorPaint video course as well as the ZBrush video course. Now, what I just did is I went to File, Import, and just select the import mesh, and I am selecting the mesh that I've just exported. You can see here the formats. You have also GLB, GTL, GLTF, which are open source like Blender. So you can also go in Blender and then come from Blender in ArmorPaint, and you will find courses and guides also for that in the channel. So I'm gonna go for import, leave, parse, transform, and there you go. So I have the model, but it looks a little bit strange. So well, it looks fine on the top, but it looks strange on the bottom. And let's try to paint right away. Well, it's also painting not okay, I think. So there is an issue here. So not every time you can only export meshes. Sometimes you are like, it's necessary, you are forced to import also the mapping, the map. You need to unwrap, you need to define how the material will be there. Now this is the OBJ and it looks a little bit better, but not 100%. So you can use here in ArmorPaint also different materials. So you can just go in the material tab, create a new material, paint with different materials. And those are going to be displayed there in the material window. So you can also paint with one layer or more layers, also with the diffuse channel, but also with the roughness, with the specular, with the normal. So all of this stuff is covered again in the ArmorPaint video course, which you will find in the channel, as well as the ZBrush video course, Blender video course, and so on. So I'm just going to quick here just to give you a demonstration of how you can create more materials, paint with different materials on the same layer, or also using different layers. Now let's go back in ZBrush because we need to address the mapping and the texture problem, or let's say fix. So I'm gonna use this other model from the ZBrush video course. This is kind of a elk troll, something like that. I just invented this. So you can see here there is only one subtool. So we're gonna focus on one subtool. And if you click colorize, if you click on the little brush there, you can start to paint on top of your base material. Now, usually I do a color fill with the material in order that I have like a base material to work with, and then I'm gonna paint on top of that. Otherwise, you can just make sure that colorize is on and that you are actually painting. Now, if we go in the texture map section of the tool, you can see that there are no textures there. So if I export this, it will not probably work in another software. So it will not export the mapping or the texture. Now, another thing I can do here is increase or decrease the number of subdivisions. Now, this is really important because from here you can export low poly model if you go into the first subdivision level, and if you increase the subdivision level, you can export like high poly model, and you can go higher and higher until it's permitted by the other software. So also make sure that you have the subdivisions available and ready to be used. Now I'm going to move in the Z plugin section here, and also you can use Decimation Master, which is a plugin to decrease the number of polygons if you have like a really high poly model and it's too high. And then you move into UV Master. So I'm just going to click on Wrap here, but in the course you'll find more information about the features here of the UV Master. But UV Master is just really easy to use if you want to use it like in a basic level. So you click on Unwrap, and now we have the Unwrap. So all we need to do now, well, let's decrease the subdivisions for the moment. You can see if you decrease the subdivisions, you also decrease the quality of the texture. So you can unwrap, and well, actually you need to go to the lower subdivisions if you want to unwrap. Otherwise, sometimes it will not unwrap. So this is why having subdivisions is also very important. So before you unwrap, make sure you are in subdivisions level 1, so it could be faster, easier, and it's gonna work essentially. So let's do that. And now it's unwrapping. We can see there on the top. So if it doesn't show that progress bar, it means that you are probably not unwrapping. So something went wrong. Check the subdivisions. And now let's go to the UV map. Here is where you define the resolution of the UV map. So 2K is pretty good. And now in the texture map section, you can see that now we have this create button here, and we can do new from polypaint. So that's gonna like capture or bake all the painting that we've done so far on that mesh into an unwrap map that we just unwrapped with the UV master. So everything is like coming together. You can also clone the texture here and export it by saving that as a standard image with the JPEG format or other formats, but just saving that manually doing this operation. So this is one way you can do it. So save it, say okay, and we can also save the displacement map. This is good to export details. So you can export like a low poly model, but still you can export all the 3D details by exporting the displacement map and the normal map. So usually what you do, like the video games or things where you need low poly, is to export the mesh in a low poly. You can also use this one here, which is called FBX, import export. So we can try also with that. So you export the low poly model, and then you export the high quality textures. And also another tool to do that is the multimap exporter, again in the Z plugin. Now with the multimap exporter, you will export automatically all these textures right here. So cavity, ambient occlusion, normal, displacement, texture from polypaint, and also the mesh. So make sure that everything is activated so that you can export. And you can export first a low poly, or you can then increase the subdivisions and export in high poly. So this is what I did. I created more folders here. So every time I export another level of detail or level of quality, I've just create a new folder, call it export, and just type the number like 3 to remember that this is like the third level of subdivisions. Now don't worry about the PSD format down there, just save it. It's gonna eventually work. Okay, now we created some, and there you go. Now we can actually see the maps being exported and all the information be exported. So everything there should be in that folder. Now let's get back to ArmorPaint again. first we start with the mesh. So let's try here with the one that we exported with the FBX exporter, but we also have mesh in the multi-map exporter folder. So this is looking fine. Let's check the painting quality. All right, now this is okay. Now you can see how it's painting beautifully on the mesh without any issue. And we didn't address the seams and things like that, but you will find that in the video course, in the full video course. Now we can also use the fill here to fill up a model with a color, and we can see that now the texture right there is looking like an unwrap map. So even though we don't have an unwrap texture, we can work with the mapping, and we can now see that it's working beautifully. I can create new layers. I can paint with one layer on top of the other. I can also erase some parts of the front layer so that I can see what's beneath that. So this is more or less how ArmorPaint works, but again, check the full video course. It's going to be really interesting, and you're going to learn a lot of really important features that you can use with ArmorPaint, which is an open source software. Now, again, let's do another import. This time I want to check the multi-map export. So let's look for that folder right there. You can see it. And now we can only see the mesh because we are importing the mesh. So we are importing. There you go. And I think this is OBJ or FBX anyway. Now we don't see any texture at the moment. Usually when you see texture that are imported, you can see it down there. If it didn't do it automatically, you can just open it up, import it, and there you go. That's your unwrap texture there. But how can we use it if we want to use it here in ArmorPaint? Now, double click on the texture. There you go. You can see it there like in a preview. And here we can see the material. So we can just like unlink the color from the base color and just delete that node, because instead of using a standard color, we want to use a texture. So let's go to texture, image texture, and just connect the color to the base color. It automatically detected that texture, and then click and drag the material right away on top of the 3D model. And there it is. You can see it also up there in the layers. And then again, you can drag, drop layers, change the visibility order, arrange it differently, manage the different layers. And now again, I'm using the erase to erase and see what's beneath that gray layer. And beneath that gray layer is my material with the texture, the mapping, and everything else. So we saw everything in this video: how to export the FBX, how to export mapping, how to export textures. And this will be all for this video guide. If you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support us, join the channel as a supporter. Thanks for watching. See you in the next.